The law has been developed over the last 2.5 decades or more through a slow iterative process, and each reform has been incremental and very carefully considered whilst consulting all the stakeholders and often introduced with bipartisan support. The Treasurer has spoken about the need to swing the pendulum a little back the other way. This proposal is not about swinging a pendulum, it's about driving a wrecking ball through over 2 decades of carefully considered reform. These laws are absolutely vitally important because every day people out there in the world are entering into consumer credit contracts that have the capacity to greatly enhance their lives or to totally ruin them. And financial counsellors and services like ours witness every day the consequences of when those contracts go horribly wrong. The impact on people, on their mental health, on their family relationships, on their ability to participate productively in society is quite phenomenal. It's very difficult to overestimate the impact that having too much debt can have on individuals and their families. Responsible lending provisions require lenders to make appropriate inquiries about the needs of a person seeking a loan, their objectives and their financial situation. Without all those factors, it is really difficult to say whether a loan is inappropriate to a person's circumstances or not. Consumers in these situations may be completely unsophisticated in the ways of credit and of the market. They may actually be reasonably educated and literate and yet still be easily taken in by products that look attractive, that are often sold by people under incentive arrangements that have a huge capacity to bring them undone. And let's face it, we're not talking about buying a pair of shoes that you regret here. We're talking about sometimes a lifelong commitment. For the people selling loans, this is their business. For the people entering them, this is something they do, once every couple of years, if that. Look, we take calls from people all the time who are in despair about the financial situation they find themselves in. Those people are often suffering considerable mental strain. In some cases, they are considering suicide. It's an extremely serious situation to be in, and it's easy for people who are on the outside to say they shouldn't have done it or it's only money. But for the people who think that they may be losing the home that their family has, been raised in, that they've invested so much emotionally in, or people who fear that they may be made bankrupt, that it may destroy their marriage, these are really, really serious consequences. I think that this proposal does a number of things. It strips out the clear obligations on lenders to conduct certain inquiries and to make sure that loans are suitable. But it also strips out the rights of consumers to seek remedies when that goes wrong. And it strips out the serious penalties that should apply when lenders fly in the face of the intent of these laws. It's very easy for people to talk about borrower responsibility, but when they do that, they fail to understand the complexity of many situations, and where you have circumstances where borrowers may be under the power of another person. They may be an elderly person, potentially subject to financial abuse. They can be in a desperate situation because of, an unforeseen personal circumstance, and to imagine that people in those circumstances are able to act rationally and protect their interests effectively, it's just delusional. And when you add to that the layer of people who are incentivised to sell loans with a very clear profit motive, it's a really dangerous dynamic. And the people who end up suffering are often those who can afford to the least. I think it's really important to remember the lessons of the Royal Commission. One of the key findings of the Royal Commission was that the laws that we have in place, particularly around responsible lending, are effective in themselves. The problem is enforcement. Now, we have continued to see problems with responsible lending beyond the enactment of those laws. Certainly things improved, but the problems did not go away. The key recommendation of the Commission was to enforce the law, but instead 2 years down the track we're throwing them in the garbage.